Hello and welcome to this next module in which we're going to be talking about different types of trust. Partly this is about vocabulary, about learning some of the words that you will hear when you talk to people about trust, but actually it's quite a lot more than that because we're also talking about basic structural and design concepts and potentially also the difference between a good trust, a trust that works, and a bad trust, a trust that doesn't work. The vocabulary we're going to cover, the first part, we're going to talk about a fixed trust and a discretionary trust, and we're going to decide what is the difference between those two things, and then look briefly at a hybrid trust, which probably, as you can guess, is partly fixed and partly discretionary. And the other vocabulary that we're going to talk about is a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. That sounds quite simple, but it's maybe a little bit more complicated than it might look. Okay, so we begin with people's concept of what a trust is, and if you watch television programs, it's funny how often trusts come up. And when you look at those trusts that you see on television, they look pretty much like this. So we have, as you would normally expect, a founder, we have some trustees, and on television, of course, we have big piles of delicious looking money that everybody is extremely interested in. And in our fictional television trust, we've got three daughters. We've got Doris, we've got Sally, and we've got Pamela, and the trust is very simple. The trust says that at some point in the future, let's say, for example, when Doris, Sally, and Pamela, when they turn 25, at some point they each get 1/3 of the fantastically large amount of money. By the way, 25, I use that age because it's quite a popular age for people to use when they are designing trusts. Of course, the age of adulthood is normally 18, but I remember myself as an 18-year-old, and I wasn't that smart. So it's very common for people to use 25 because by that stage, children tend to be more settled in life and a little bit more mature. But whatever age you like, could be 40 if you want. So in any case, we've got Doris, we've got Sally and Pamela with a fixed entitlement to 1/3 of the money each, and that is why this is called a fixed trust. It's fixed. So that sounds pretty simple. But generally speaking, if you look out there in the big wide world, people do not usually make trusts like this. There's a few reasons why not. The first set of reasons are what I would call practical issues. So, for example, if we go back to our previous slide and we look at the way it's designed, we have Doris, Sally, and Pamela. What happens if, before anybody reaches the age 25, what happens if Doris unfortunately dies? What do you do? So, maybe you say, well, in that case, we will divide the money into two halves and give half each to Sally or Pamela. But on the other hand, what about if Doris dies, but when she dies, she has children of her own? Maybe that her third should go to her children. It's not an impossible problem to solve, but it's a problem that you have to think about in advance, and you have to write some rules about it. So what you think is simple becomes a bit more complicated. Then you can face other problems. For example, it may be that Sally, by the time she's 25, is incredibly rich, and she doesn't need the money anymore, whereas Doris and Pamela are struggling financially, and it would probably be fairer to maybe give more money to Doris and Pamela and less to Sally, but this is a fixed trust, so there is no choice, there is no freedom in that way. What happens if Sally doesn't want the money? Sally says, no thanks. What are the rules then? It's a similar dilemma or similar problem to what you would get if somebody dies, but nevertheless you still have to think about this possibility. And the last thing, this is what makes this very simple idea seem very, very complicated, is what I call the recalculation dilemma. Because unless Doris, Sally and Pamela are triplets, they all were born on different days in different years, and they're all going to turn 25 at different times. So Doris turns 25 first. That's relatively easy. You work out the value of the assets of the trust and you pay 1/3 of that value to Doris, and she goes away, and she's now no longer a beneficiary of the trust. Her interest in the trust is finished, and we have Sally and Pamela left, who would then become entitled to half each. But what happens then if Sally dies? Pamela gets all the money, so she would end up getting 2/3 of the money, and Doris would have got only 1/3. Not fair. No problem. You need to anticipate this problem when you create a structure like this. What happens if Doris gets her third, and then after that there is a huge investment market crash, so that the value of the remaining shares is actually much lower? How does that work? Is that just bad luck? Or do you somehow compensate? What happens if the reverse happens? There is a huge uptick in the value of the assets in the trust, and so Sally and Pamela will end up getting much more money than Doris got. Is that okay? Or do you have some formula or some system where you pay extra money to Doris? So like I said, this seemingly simple model, actually, when you really start to think about it, usually turns out to be not simple at all. But that's not the end of the problems. Those are only practical problems. There is a much more fundamental problem with this fixed trust concept, and it is this. When we create a trust, we are creating a trust usually because we want to protect. We want to protect our family assets from the outside world, from attack by the outside world. We want to sometimes protect our family assets from ourselves, from the irresponsible actions of potential future generations. And when you make a fixed trust, it doesn't really do that good a job of protection. When people have a fixed entitlement, or I should say fixed future entitlement, because until they reach 25, they don't actually have any entitlement. But when they have this fixed future entitlement, it creates problems. The first problem that very often people express to us is the fact that knowledge can spoil people. So if I'm a young person and I know that when I get to the age 25, I'm going to get a whole lot of money, it's very demotivating. Why would I work hard? Why would I succeed? Why would I try to better myself when I know everything is going to be handed to me on a silver platter? I know, other people probably know as well. And what that then does is it opens a door for potential gold diggers, potential future ex-husbands and ex-wives who could very well be interested in getting their hands on a share of this big pile of money. Not just future ex-wives and husbands, but also creditors and lawsuits. And what happens if Doris goes bankrupt? What happens if she's bankrupt on her 25th birthday? If it really is a fixed trust, then the trustees have to pay her the money, which will all go away to the creditors, and Doris will get no benefit from that. What happens if Doris is on drugs when she's 25? We hope that doesn't happen, but with young people, it's very hard to predict the future. What happens if she has some other kind of addiction? If it's a fixed trust, the rules are fixed, which means the trustees have to pay her the money, whether it's a good idea or not. And last but not least, If I know that I've got a lot of money coming to me, then there is a temptation to spend that money in advance. So this brilliant idea we had of waiting until 25 to distribute the money actually turns out to be maybe not so brilliant, because the 18-year-old will spend all the money anyway. And so we don't, in real life, when we make trusts, we don't usually do it like on television. What we do is something a little bit different. So, we have, as you would expect, we have our founder, set law grantor, we have our trustees, we have our big pile of money, and we do have our three children. We do have, and I've forgotten their names, Doris, Sally, and Pamela, and they are here. You can see in this big circle. Really we've got the same thing as before. There is, however, a big difference, because in the last version we said that each of them will get 1/3 each on their 25th birthday. So we said to them how much and when. And in this version, we don't say that. We just say that the beneficiaries are the three girls. We don't say when they get it, and we don't say how much they get. So nobody's got any fixed entitlement or fixed right. There's no certainty with this, and there's suddenly a lot more flexibility for the trustees to be able to solve the kind of problems that we talked about before. But, of course, you're wondering, yeah, but I want my three daughters to get 1/3 each. That's perfectly okay. That is the intention here. It's not written anywhere in the official documents of the trust, but that is still the plan, that is still the intention. And that is why we have here the protector, the supervisor, the enforcer, who plays an important role in checking that everybody follows the rules. And the rules are set out in something called the Memorandum of Wishes. So to explain, we have the formal trust documents, the trust deed. Sometimes it's the foundation statute or the constitution, or it has many different magical names. It's not important. This is the formal legal document. It says there are the three beneficiaries, doesn't say when, doesn't say how much. The Memorandum of Wishes, this is an, let's say, unofficial document. It's a letter from the founder to the trustees, and it tells them exactly what they should do and when, but it's not an official document, and also it's not completely binding on them. It gives them some discretion to use their brains to deal with situations like we talked about on the last slide. And depending on the founder may say, look, I really trust these people. I'm very happy to let them carry out my wishes and use common sense. Or the founder might say, no, I think I would like to have an extra person here, a protector, supervisor, enforcer, to make sure that what I said in my Memorandum of Wishes is what they actually do. And the supervisor has the power, if these people, the trustees, do not cooperate, if they do not follow the rules, supervisor has the power to get rid of them and replace them with somebody else. So in our example, so far we're talking about the three girls, and we named them specifically. We could name them, or we could make a group. So we could say, instead of saying their names, we could say, for example, all my children. And that's probably better, because that means if I have more children, then they are automatically included in the group. And that's why here I've put here these very light grey people. It's saying people can be beneficiaries of a trust actually who don't even exist yet, because they form part, or they will when they come into existence, they will form part of a group. And there's more people here. There's more people here, for example, cousins and nieces and nephews and, of course, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And I've created this big pool of people, and they are all people who potentially, possibly, maybe in reality, will get some benefit from this trust. But remember, even though I did all of that, my plan at the beginning is that I am interested really in looking after those 3 girls. What I have done by adding all these extra people here is I have improved the protection of the trust, because nobody can now say, oh, look, it belongs to them. It doesn't belong to anybody. And if it does, you can argue that perhaps it somehow belongs to all of these people. But all these other people probably are never going to get any money. But they are there just in case. They are there, I would say, almost for padding. And this thing we have created is called the discretionary trust. So our goal is the same as it was last time. We want to give 1/3 to each of the girls, but we're doing it in this much richer, much more flexible way, and in a way that is much more difficult for anybody to attack. Anybody from the outside and anybody from the inside. And that is a discretionary trust. Just to go back, we talked about fixed trust. One time you do see them, it's worth briefly mentioning, is in this situation. This is the situation where which is very common, where you have couples who have children from previous relationships. Perhaps they both of them have children, or one of them has children, and they're now married to somebody else who is not the mother or father of their children. So what do they want to do? They want to, when they are gone, they want to, of course, look after their current partner, husband or wife, and they also want to look after their own children. They don't necessarily want to look after some future children that their current partner might have in the future. Or if he or she's already got her own or his own children, you don't want to look after them. I'm interested in looking after my kids. So this model, how this works is here is me, here is the trustees, here is the assets in the trust, which is a house. And what it says my trust documents, they say, okay, if I die, then my wife has the ability to live in my house, or our house, but my bit of our house, to earn the interest and the income from the investment portfolio, to live and enjoy the income from those assets. But when she is gone, then I would like the money to be divided equally between my 3 daughters. This is called a life interest, or sometimes more formally interest in possession, and it's quite common. It's common especially in wills. Wills in many countries are also trusts. It's created in the will, and quite simple, and perhaps without so many of the difficulties we talked about, because the most important thing is that these 3 people do not know. They might know what they're getting, but they do not know when they're going to get it, because it depends on when their surviving spouse dies, sometimes remarries. Depends on something that's beyond their control. But sometimes you do see people say, yes, I still don't like it because it's got the problems of a fixed trust, so I will make this part discretionary, as we did in the last slide. So we have a fixed part and we have a discretionary part, and that's called a hybrid trust. Okay, so that's fixed and discretionary. Now I'd like to talk about revocable and irrevocable. Okay, fancy words. Revocable means that I can cancel it, and irrevocable means I cannot cancel it. So in the case of a founder, I establish my trust. I put my assets into the trust, and if I have a revocable trust, I can say, changed my mind, and everything comes back to me. And if the trust is irrevocable, I can't do that. Okay. Whether this is a good idea depends on a few things. It's quite attractive to say it would be great if I change my mind. Let's say tax situation changes or my own personal situation changes. It would be great to have the ability for me just to go, yep, it's cancelled, everything comes back. It's nice and flexible. It's very, very appealing, but it also creates a lot of problems. Most important problem is a very simple problem. Remember, we are trying to protect the assets from attack. And if I own something personally, that thing is vulnerable to attack. Therefore, I put it into a trust to protect it. But if I have a revocable trust, and for example, I go bankrupt, then the bankruptcy administrator is going to say to me, James, you have a trust, but you have a trust that you can just cancel like that and get all the money back. So that looks like a bank account to me. I'd like you to cancel the trust and get all the money back and give it to your creditors. And in most countries, the courts will agree with that suggestion. So if I make a trust revocable, then I lose quite a lot of the potential benefit of protection. And if I look at the world generally, these, by the way, are the flags of the Commonwealth countries. So pretty much in all of these countries you will find that there are trusts. Just a little illustration that trusts are everywhere. If you look all around the world, people tend not to use revocable trusts if they are worried about attack from the outside. If they are creating the trust to protect from the inside, in other words, it's a trust that's focusing on inheritance or family succession or these kind of issues, then sure, why not make it revocable? If you go bankrupt, you will lose the money in the trust, but if that's not a threat, then there is no reason not to make it revocable, because it gives you that nice extra bit of reassurance. If you want a really strong trust, a trust that's difficult or impossible for someone to attack, then you always want to go with irrevocable. And we'll talk about it later, but trusts grow stronger the longer you have them. So an irrevocable trust that you created 5 years or 10 years ago is extremely hard for anybody to attack. Final little word for our friends in America. In America, these words are very commonly used, and they have a kind of a special meaning. It is the same basic idea. A revocable trust is created by the founder and can be cancelled during his lifetime, can be changed. An irrevocable trust cannot be cancelled, cannot be changed. In the US, people talk about revocable trusts and call them also living trusts. And it's interesting to me that the tax treatment of these living trusts is in some cases the same as if the founder had not put them into a trust. So we created a separate thing, but we didn't create separate taxation. Why would you do that? People do it in the US because they want to avoid the cost and expense of going through the probate process. That's the process that you go through with the court after you die to manage your inheritance. And what happens, in fact, when you do die, the revocable trust then becomes irrevocable, because, of course, if you're dead, pretty hard to revoke it. So these are words you see a lot in the States. It's about the flexibility to change, the same as everywhere else in the world, but it's also important in relation to tax. And that's all from this module. Thank you very much for your attention. The next session will be on who gets the money, We'll be talking about beneficiaries and how that all works. So thank you. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found that useful and helpful. If you'd like to see more of this, please like the video and please subscribe using the button that you can see just there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and thanks again for watching.